You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
Try to slice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood, art Ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today I want to focus a little bit more on the business and exhibition side of the art world, because the way that art is displayed and makes its way out into the public makes a huge difference. And I am fortunate today, my guest is Amy Gelman, who is with the 57th Street Art Fair right here in my hometown of Chicago. They're having their 79th anniversary, and this is a wonderful art fair that has actually a great history. So I really appreciate Amy Gelman. Thank you so much for coming on to share some information about the show.
Thank you, Kyle. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited because art fairs are an important opportunity for artists to get their work out there to the people, to be seen. And the 57th Street Fair is a wonderful tradition in Chicago. It's been around for, what is 79th anniversary?
Yes.
Am I right there?
Yes.
Which, like, that is such a huge milestone for the fair and for people participating in it. And we'll get into some of the amazing artists who have displayed there in the past. But before we even get into the history of the fair, I think it's important, you know, as an artist who's shown in fairs myself, I know, like, we're getting into the dead of winter right now, and people are probably not thinking about, like, what am I doing this spring and summer and all of that. But the greatest fairs, you kind of got to get your applications in early. So can you talk about, like, what are the deadlines for people who want to participate in the show?
The deadline for our fair is January 15th. So there's still plenty of time to apply. You apply through this application website, and it's an easy application. It's $45 application fee,
which is a very reasonable fee. And for listeners, if you are an artist and eager to participate, the application, I think it's ZAPP, which is one that a lot of fairs use. I've filled it out. It's one of the easier forms to fill out. So check the links in the show notes. But now on to the history, because that's what I am super fascinated by. Can you get into just like the very beginning, the roots of the show? Like, how did this all get started?
Well, it was a very organic beginning. It began in 1948. Mary Louise Womer owned a gallery, the Little Gallery in Hyde Park. At that time, Hyde Park had a serious art colony. And so she would entertain artists in her gallery. It was kind of a meeting place. And she decided that they needed an opportunity to really show their work. So she decided to do this fair in 1948. She strung string between trees. She hung art on between the trees and on fences. And 51 artists participated, paying 50 cents each. And I think they made around $500 in the fair. So after that, it was a lot of work. She and her husband had to do all the cleanup afterwards. She was kind of annoyed about it, but she felt it was important, and she decided to continue it. So she continued it year after year. The second year, I believe there were twice as many artists. And then in 1950 is when she first organized a committee. So she wasn't doing it entirely. So the third one, she had a committee. And then in 1963, they added a jury. So we became truly a juried art fair. And we are quite discerning in the art that we have in the fair. We do not allow reproductions. We want only original art done by the artist who is exhibiting.
That is just so amazing to think, like, such humble beginnings. I mean, talk about literally like a shoestring budget, just stringing stuff up between trees. And, you know, I was dying to know this because, like, you know, you always hear like 50 cents. That was a lot of money back then. So like I did the calculations, and it looks like, you know, 50 cents back then was still not that much money. It was like the equivalent of about $7 today.
Exactly.
So, it might buy you a cheeseburger if you're going to a low cost location. But that is so delightful that she just wanted to create an exhibition or a space for people to show and sell their work. And $500, in sales from that, like that's a tremendous success right off the bat. Just selling it on the streets. And then it sort of organically evolved into something a little bit bigger with obviously the juries and a more rigorous screening process. So can you tell me, like, what you alluded to this a little bit when you said, like, you're looking for handmade pieces by the artist, not reproductions and all of that sort of stuff. But, for people who might not be familiar, what kinds of works are we going to see there? Is it known for its paintings? Is it ceramic pieces? Is it functional art? Is it, can you tell our listeners what kinds of works would they see in the fair?
The answer is yes to all of those. We have art these days in 14 art categories. So we're talking about ceramics, digital art. I can name them all. Do you want to hear them all? Mixed media, painting, sculpture, paper, wood objects and handcrafted furniture, jewelry, fiber, glass, photography, leather, printmaking, and drawing. So I think that we cover quite the full range of art, and I would say there's a really nice blend, and we really make an effort to have a mix of this art, because we get a lot of painting, we get a lot of jewelry, and we try to have a nice mix of all of the art.
Okay, and so it went from just like tying some ropes between the trees and hanging stuff literally on the side of the road, it sounds like, to a much bigger exhibition now. Can you talk about, like, just how big has it gotten? Like, how many artists are we seeing in this kind of thing? And maybe if there's an evolution of that, I would love to hear about, how big the space has become, how many booths or tents are set up, and all of that sort of stuff.
Sure. We go from, we're all along 57th Street from Woodlawn to Kenwood, and then we go up Kimbark to 56th Street. So it's sort of a T of space. And we have had we've had over 200 artists, but we found that around 200, just under 200, is the sweet spot for the space we have and for the kind of art we want to show. And they're all in booths that they bring. We have a crew. The one thing we do pay for is a crew to help our artists set up their booths. So we have that service offered to our artists. And our artists say that we really value our artists. Yes, we really value our guests who attend, but we are very interested in making our artists feel very important. So we have gotten that kind of feedback from our artists, that they feel that they are treated really, really well, because we feel they're the heart of our fair. And
that, as an artist, I do appreciate. And can you talk a little bit about, like, just a little peek behind the curtain of how a fair like this comes together, because obviously, there's a jury. So there's an application for the artists. They have to fill out, they have to write about what their work is, and I'm sure submit, images of the work and that sort of stuff. But there's just, I have to imagine so much going into it, from the permitting to, like, do you have one jury that looks at all of this? Do you have smaller groups that look according to category? What are the jurors looking for? Like, I know I'm throwing out like a million questions, so you can just pick whichever ones you feel like answering. But can you give us a peek behind, like, how does this all come together?
So we have a jury of 7 people. And what I've done recently, because I've been on the jury on the committee for 3 years now. This will be my 4th fair. So although I've been attending the fair for so many years, I don't want to tell you, many years. So the jurors serve on the committee, on the jury for 2 years. So half the jury has done it the year before and half is new. So it works really nicely because they can, go from, share their experience. And our jury is made up of both artists and art appreciators. So we do not give them any criteria on which to base their judging. We say, you judge however you can judge art, because it's obviously there's a lot of subjectivity there, and we want to respect the jurors' perspectives. So once we receive an application, we go through a couple of committee members go through and determine whether the art qualifies. We want to make sure that, it's done by the artist, as we said, that it's not copies, that they really appreciate the quality of work at the fair. And then it goes to the jury. So the jury evaluates the submissions online, and the first thing they determine is, in February, they determine is to get a newcomer award. The jury sees all of the new submissions and all of submissions of the categories that are juried that year. So, for instance, this year the jury categories are ceramics, paper, and fiber. But anybody who exhibited last year in another category usually just goes with the fair. Doesn't need to be rejuried. So that's the first part that the jury does. And then the second part that they do is, at the fair, they jury all of the artists in person. And then we take their ratings and determine awards. So we have about 10 awards that we give with some monetary value to the artists, and they get to, display their ribbon.
That's fantastic. So, that's a little bit about the jury process. Now, as just the nerd, I always want to know about like logistics. Like, how early do you have to plan this to get the permitting? What are you doing to advertise the show, aside from being stuck talking to people like me? I'm just so curious. How does this all come together? How many people are a part of this organization volunteering to help out? And how big is the crew, so to speak? All of that.
So we have the fair at the very, very beginning of June. We usually have a meeting in July to just kind of talk a little bit about how we felt it went. We take August off, and then we dive back in September. We have monthly meetings. There's about 8 of us on the committee, so we're kind of a small group, and we start organizing at that point. So one of the things, we have a poster every year, and so we have to determine who is going to be the poster artist for that year. So that's all starts in September. I mean, we're thinking about that at the fair itself, and then that all begins in September. So we are starting to advertise to artists. So first we want to attract the artists. So that's our first challenge. And we do have a great PR firm, a small company we've worked with for 12 years, who helps us with a lot of the PR work. And of course, we're using social media like crazy, and Instagram, Facebook, all of the above. So that's the beginning. And then the permits are always not the most fun part of it, but the really critical part of the fair. And so we start that pretty early, but we can't complete that because of some of the requirements that the permitting has. Some of it, they want to see all the artist names and all of that. And sometimes we don't have that till near the end. So there's always that little bit of pressure near the end to get it all done. But yeah, we are working through virtually the whole year on this project.
Wow.
With a lot of love.
That is amazing. I mean, I kind of knew there's a lot that goes into it, but when you hear that you're pretty much all year to get this event done, I mean, it makes sense, but it's still just amazing to me. And so you're really looking for and kind of recruiting artists for those poster pieces, like almost right after the fair ends. You're already looking out for the next one. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So quite an honor for those people who are selected to have their work shown.
We've had really great, and it's one poster off artist per year. So this is, we've tried to have a variety of artists. We had one artist who was a ceramicist, and so that was fun because that was a different way to, put ceramics on a poster.
I love that. And, I feel like ceramics don't get their due, and I feel guilty about that myself. So any listeners who are ceramic artists, I would encourage you to apply, show your work at 57th Street Fair, links in the show notes. But also, if you are a ceramic artist and want to share your work on this show, I would love to get more insights into that process. So email me about that. But now, after a short break, I do want to get into more of the arts and the artists who have shown at the fair over the years. Welcome back. My guest this week is Amy Gelman from the 57th Street Art Fair right here in Chicago. And, we've talked a little bit about the history of the fair, but I love the art and the artists that show at these exhibitions. And I know 57th Street has had some heavy hitters come throughout the years. Can you talk a little bit about some of the artists who have come through the fair, some of the people that have caught your eye, in recent years, as well as people historically, big names people might recognize?
So, interestingly enough, Claes Oldenburg, the famous sculptor, who died only a few years ago, apparently his earliest recorded sales of artworks were at the 57th Street Fair, sometime between 1957. Apparently, he sold five items for a total of $25.
Which is just mind-blowing to me because, again, if you do like the inflation calculations, that's somewhere around $300 today.
Exactly.
So like that is a steal for Oldenburg's work. Wow, that is absolutely amazing.
And apparently Richard Hunt exhibited at the fair and apparently was at one point on the jury and after that. So we have some really some really nice history here. So now in terms of more recent artists, one of the artists who has been amazing at our fair for a number of years, since 2009, is an illustrator who does these amazing detailed drawings, Taylor Mazer. And he started in 2009, as I said. And at that time, he was very inexperienced. And I'm told that members of the committee actually helped him set up a booth, and really got him going. And he has been at the fair continually since that time and has won many awards from us, and I'm sure others. And his work is beautiful. Another artist I want to mention from a personal standpoint is a sculptor named Malin Pearson. And Malin does these amazing metal sculptures from found metal, and they're animals, and they're outdoor type sculptures. And we have filled our backyard with his work. Apparently, he has also sold to some quite famous people like Robert Redford and folks like that. So he has been just an amazing artist who has been with the fair also a long time, since 2012. So those are just a couple of the fantastic artists that we've had at the fair.
And, for listeners interested in seeing some examples of these works, I will put some links in the show notes to those websites. Like I'm right now, one of the 100 tabs that I have open is, Taylor Mazur's work. And these drawings are absolutely gorgeous. So polished and refined. Like the illustration work, it's these pen and ink pieces that are truly stunning. I absolutely love the work I'm seeing here. And so, like I said, listeners, check the links. But I love that you say the fair actually, like, they saw this raw talent but like, I want to emphasize raw. You guys had to help with the setup of the booth and everything like that.
It wasn't there, but I'm told that was the case. Yes.
That's kind of wonderful. And that's the kind of spirit that you see in art fairs. Like I vividly remember my first time showing in an art fair in suburbs of Chicago, in a different art fair, but like I had no idea what I was doing. I had a tent, and I was like the day of, like, oh, how do I actually hang stuff from here? And like, trying to and like people at the fair, other artists were like, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to hang this. This will work for this fair, but for the next one, you need to get this. And like, it's all these little things. And I think there's something really beautiful about a community of artists and art lovers that come together to support each other and help each other out. Like you talked about, this is a volunteer organization that meets all year to make this happen. And I think there's something really beautiful about people doing that just for the sake of helping each other out and to support the arts.
And to add on to what you said, Kyle, the artists themselves interact so beautifully with each other. We love that, when we're setting up and we see the artists visiting each other's booths and, sharing their experiences too. So yes, as a committee member, we love the interaction that we have with the artists, but it's really fun to see the artists interact with each other.
And so that leaves me a perfect segue. I want to talk a little bit more about, the experience of going to art fairs from the perspective of artists and patrons. So after a short break, I want to talk a little bit about what to anticipate, what to look out for at this year's coming fair. Today, we're talking specifically about the 57th Street Fair. And, it's a beautiful art fair. I want to remind listeners who are fellow artists, if you're interested in showing your work, the application deadline, you said, was January 15th? January 15th. So you can show your work. And, if you're not sure about it, I would always encourage you to apply and put your work out there, because the experience of art fairs, from my personal experience, and I've shown at a number of them, it's always been a wonderful experience. You make a little bit of money, but you also make some friends, and you get insights from fellow artists, and you learn from how people are responding to your work. But Amy, can you talk a little bit about, what's your experience at the fair? Because you're coming at this from a different perspective. What do you see? What are the highlights? And, what do you encourage people to look for if they're attending the fair as patrons?
Well, the fair is it's not just the art. I want to talk a little bit about what else is at the fair, but we can talk more about the art in a minute. But this is a really wonderful family experience. We have, as we said, that almost 200 artists. We have music that's provided by the Buddy Guy Legends organization. So we have amazing music that's going on during the fair. We've collaborated with Ray School, which is a public school that's right in the middle of our fair area. And they allow us to use their cafeteria. And their parent-teacher organization used to sell food there. But now we have food trucks. So we've all moved a little bit into the future. So we really have a wonderful, full experience. And then we have children's activities, children's art activities at the fair. So it's really a nice overall experience. The weather is usually okay. It's the first weekend of weekend in June, so it can be different kinds of weather, but usually the weather is really quite lovely. So it's really an overall wonderful experience. So, but in terms of the art, it's an opportunity to get really close up to art and to talk to the artists. The artists really want to share with our guests their work and how they got there, and they love to talk about their process. So I think that this is a really great opportunity for people to learn more about how the art is made, and it makes it even more meaningful when you buy a piece of art that you've met the person who did the work, and you understand what went behind that work of art.
And that's fantastic, and I'm curious for your insights. Like, if when I go to a fair, not showing work, I'm looking at different work, and trying to look for, what's a quality piece? I obviously have my initial gut reaction of like, oh, this catches my eye and stuff like that. I like the colors. I like the subject. I like the scale of it, whatever. But one thing that's always stuck out to me, I remember way back when I was in art school, I was talking to one of my professors, and, I said, like, when you look at, an Abex work, how do you know if this person was good or just stumbling around the barn spilling paint on a canvas? And I remember she said, you look at the edges. You can always see, like, around the edges, not just the perimeter of the canvas, but the treatment of edges and shapes and stuff. Like you can see hesitation in the brush strokes, or you can see when it's the confident, bold stroke. And I got to say, like, that was a really great insight. I'm curious, as you look at works of art, what are some of the things you look for as markers of quality? What makes an artist stand out to you as strong?
I'm not an artist, Kyle, so I don't come at it from, an educated art school person. I think art is very personal. And I really think, yes, you can talk about the quality. I mean, we are discerning when we select our artists. So we are looking at artists who are, produce quality work. But we have the jurors who we rely upon to be looking more at what you're talking about in terms of the true quality of the art. But when I'm looking at art, I'm looking at something that speaks to me personally, and I want something that I enjoy, or speaks to me in some way. You don't have to always love it, but somehow it has meaning to you. So, this is art that, you want pieces that either you want to interact with on a day-to-day basis, and you want around your home or your work, or it's pieces that just bring you joy in some way. So to me, that's how I look at art.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point also about not just like that I tend to overthink things with my formalist lens, but also that, as you said, once they get to the show, they've already passed through that filter. And so we already know that people have looked at it with that discerning eye for quality. And so you don't have to second guess your gut reactions. If you just like it, as a patron, maybe you don't need to overanalyze things. My dad always used to tell me that, the corollary to the notion that the unexamined life isn't worth living is that the overly examined life isn't either.
Very good point.
So as people go to the fair, just trust your gut. If you see something that you like, know that other people have also given it the stamp of approval. It is good. It is valid. Your tastes are all fine. And you don't need to think about it beyond that.
Well, I think that's the beauty of a juried art fair, as opposed to, other art fairs in the area. So that's why we, are particularly proud of the 57th Street Art Fair.
Yeah. And, if you don't go to a juried one, you might end up with something like, a toilet that somebody signed hanging out behind a partition. So, that's always something to consider and look out for as well. Now, before we wrap things up, do you want to say anything more about the show and opportunities for artists? Like you had talked about, you have awards for artists and, it's supportive, like, for artists who are considering joining the show, there's obviously the application process, but what else can they look out for and enjoy about the 57th Street Fair?
Yeah, we try to keep in touch with artists, and so as part of our PR, we publicize the various artists prior to the fair. So when we have accepted the artists, we are really showing their works on various social media sites. So we are not just promoting our fair, we're promoting the artists themselves also. So we are very interested in making sure that the artists get in front of the public too, even before the fair.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there and it's hard to get recognition. And so it is helpful to have a bigger organization having your back and putting your work on their socials and all of that. So it is a wonderful opportunity for people who are interested in participating, whether you are interested in participating to show your work or just to get a masterpiece from the next Klaus Oldenburg at a steal of a price. Highly recommend. Check out links in the show notes to all the details, but the 57th Street Art Fair right here in our very own Chicago. I absolutely love it. And thank you very much, Amy Gelman, for taking the time to share your insights and give us a little peek behind the curtain of how all this comes together.
Thank you, Kyle. It's been a pleasure.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.